All right, so when we talk about looking at the periodic table, and this is really from like day one, okay? This is like very, very beginning chemistry. We talk about looking at the periodic table. It's just like a zoomed in. We're kind of on the left side of the periodic table. Here's the alkali metals. Here's the alkaline metals. These are the transition metals. You know where you are now, right? If we take a look in here, we look at somebody like vanadium. Looking at this card, and I like to call these little sections of the table cards, like you had a bunch of cards and laid them out on the table like you're playing solitaire, right? So I call these the cards. So if you look at somebody like vanadium, if you look at vanadium's card, right, then you know everything you need to know about vanadium. And why do I say that? We'll write on it right here. Vanadium, it's number 23. And I'm going to round 50.94 off. I'm just going to round that to 51, okay? This is our card for vanadium. All right, so if we look at vanadium's card, we can say, hey, this number on top is called the atomic number. And it's the most important thing that you need to know about any atom. And what is the atomic, Khalil, what does the atomic number stand for? The number of protons, that's right. So the atomic number is the number of protons in an atom, all right? And then down here, we have the atomic mass. And like I said, we went over this very beginning of the school year, the atomic mass, all right? And the atomic mass is the sum of all the particles in the atom that have mass to them, okay? There's three particles. There's protons, there's neutrons, and there's electrons, okay? And we had a really simple chart about protons and neutrons and electrons. And basically it was like the charge, protons are positive, neutrons have no charge, electrons are negative. And then the mass. Protons have a mass of 1, neutrons have a mass of 1, and electrons we consider to have a mass of 0. Really they weigh 0.0006 of 1 proton. That's how light they are. They're 6/10,000ths the mass of a proton. Anyway, so we look at this. Protons have positive charge, they weigh 1. Neutrons have no charge, they weigh 1. Electrons have a negative charge, and we just say 0 for their weight. So if we look at the mass, and we know that there are 23 protons, then we can say the total mass, that is the number of protons and neutrons. So 51 minus 23, these are the numbers of protons, will give us 28, and that's the number of neutrons. So when you look at a card of any element, the number of neutrons isn't written down. It's just implied that you can subtract these two. Does that make sense? So that's just real basic chemistry 0.001. Chemistry 101, basic scale. This is the card of the periodic table. All right? So the last thing that I want to say before I go any further, really, because it's just like a real quick little thing, is if we look at the atom, really, in the middle there's a nucleus that's got protons and neutrons in it. And then flying around out here are electrons, okay? And what we're going to learn in the next month are the complicated patterns these electrons make around the nucleus, okay? They're not in these perfect circles. They're flying in these crazy patterns, all right? But electrons, I always just make a dash for them. They're outside the nucleus, okay? And then protons and neutrons are in the nucleus. So we sometimes just call them nucleons, just particles that are found in the nucleus of the atom, all right? So that's just like a quick little hop-up lesson. And tonight you're going to see like a little chart like this with, it'll say like helium. And this may not be exactly how it looks, but if it said protons 1, then it have neutron. If it said protons was 1 and the mass was 1 then you know the neutrons were 0. Does that make sense? Then over here it might say nucleons. You know, that means how many particles are in the nucleus? Well, 1, because there's only 1 proton. Does that make sense? So this is just like a real quick little dibble dabble into something to make sure everybody's seen me say this really basic thing about the periodic table. And we'll just do one more. Potassium. Potassium has 19 protons. If you want to know how many neutrons it had, you would say 39 minus 19. Potassium typically has 20 neutrons. And I say typically because all of these atoms up here, sometimes they have different numbers of neutrons. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right.